Well, I think it's anxious here in DC, and it's folks are probably pretty tired of covering this event for so many days. It goes and like 4 hour, 6 hour increments of what's Putin going to do next, what's going to be the next surprise. Like you said, this morning it was, or Sunday morning Eastern time, it was this announcement of nuclear force activation, and we actually tried to hunt that down today to find out exactly what that means. Because it means different things in what the military does versus what happens in the movies. There aren't bombers flying in the sky. They're not even loaded and gassed up on the tarmacs of airways. But it might mean communications are started, or different units are called up to be ready in case they're asked to do something. So just every little detail sends everybody into a frenzy to figure out what it means and how much more of a threat it poses directly to Kyiv, honestly.
What is the most immediate concern that you're hearing from policymakers and those in the military? Because one of the things that we've been talking about for so long now is if the United States, Western allies impose very, very harsh sanctions, as they are doing, that we could potentially see immediate pushback from Vladimir Putin from a cyber angle.
Well, the Pentagon, nothing is more important than nuclear threat at any day of the week. So the minute that came into play, I think that was the number one alarm: was this any kind of serious threat, or was it just talk? The day ahead of when the Russians are supposed to meet with the Ukrainians. The next part is watching the Russian military force on the ground. Every day, more and more of those forces amassed outside of Ukraine are sent in. It went from a third of the forces 3 days ago to just over 50%. Now today, the Pentagon said it was over 2/3. So trying to decipher what that means. Look, if Vladimir Putin wanted to flatten Ukraine, he could do it very quickly with a whole lot of missiles, cruise missiles, larger, much more active, much more damaging weapons than the small arms and the men that are going in, even with tanks that are going in. So there's a lot of firepower that's being withheld by Russia, and trying to figure out why and what the end game is really that's the number one worry in Washington.
That's exactly right, Kevin, and it's fascinating just to get your insight on what you actually think is going to happen next here, because across the weekend, the reporting suggests that the Ukrainians are still very much in control of the capital, Kiev, despite intense fighting that we have seen. What do you think is going to happen next here, and do you think that perhaps the Russians might have underestimated, in a way, the Ukrainian ground game there when it comes to defending that city and their country?
Well, I think on the Allies' side, what happens first is continuing to supply arms and weapons and equipment into Ukraine. The Pentagon says that has continued unhindered. But they won't say why. Well, we're not exactly sure how those arms are getting in. They're keeping all that under wraps, obviously for security. But it's not just ammunition. It's now Stinger missiles. It's now fighter jets that have come in from the European Union and all the other weapons that you mentioned in your introduction. This is quite a significant increase in firepower being given to the Ukrainians. What's not going to happen are troops. Not a single NATO troop, not a single American troop, at least not overtly, is going to step foot in Ukraine and give Putin the chance to go face-to-face, one-on-one with NATO. So keeping NATO on the sideline, supplying the Ukrainians as best as possible, and watching to see just how bold the Russians get if they really want to try to take Kiev. Remember, they don't want to destroy it. They don't want to wipe the map clean of Ukraine. Putin wanted to absorb it. He wanted the Ukrainians to welcome Russian control, and you can't do that if you've killed everybody. So that's where we stand.